in my conversations with parents about those beliefs, I often hear something else just sitting right underneath that belief. And it is this constant irritability that grows over time. It's a short fuse that they're like, this isn't how I used to be. It is a sense of being on edge at all times. And many parents can tell me, like, I don't like this version of myself. I don't like who I've become. I'm more reactive than I want to be. I feel impatient all the time. And they come to this conclusion, I am failing. That's what that means to them. And that is actually not true. Hi there, and welcome to the Brain First Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Devine, and I am a therapist, parent coach, and educator who supports parents that are raising children, teens, and young adults with brain-based differences and challenging behavioral symptoms. If you are a parent or caregiver of a child who has intense, confusing, relentless, or sometimes even scary behaviors, you are in the right place, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Brain First Parenting Podcast. I am your host, Eileen Devine, and I am recording this episode for you after finishing up a full day of seeing clients one-on-one. So every parent that I meet with one-on-one, they are raising kids with brain-based differences and really challenging, intense behavioral symptoms. And sometimes when I have a day like this where I'm seeing clients all day long, every session is completely different. We're talking about different kids, different dynamics, different behaviors, different concerns. But there are days when a theme sort of emerges, where it feels to me at least like session after session throughout that day, I start to hear the same thread running through every conversation. And today was one of those days. So that's when I know, okay, this is probably worth talking about in a podcast episode, because if these parents that I'm meeting with all day are talking about this thing, whatever that might be, it probably is relevant to all of you as well. So today, nearly every parent I met with said to me some version of the same thing that sounds like, I'm not good at this. I feel like I am failing as a parent. I know better. So why do I keep reacting this way? And as I heard their stories and listened to their reflection on themselves, I could see the weight of it. I could see the weight that it had on them. You could feel it in the room, so to speak. It wasn't just a passing thought. It's something that has really started to settle in. It's something that feels very, very true to them. And what struck me most wasn't just what they were saying. What struck me was, wow, here are these incredibly thoughtful, deeply committed, very informed, empathetic, caring parents who are believing these things about them. These are parents who understand their child's brain. That's been part of our work together. They are, of course, deepening their understanding of their child's brain over time, but they've got it, right? These are parents who are definitely trying. They are highly motivated. They're spending time and resources meeting with me. They are really doing the work. They are working very, very hard. These are parents who are showing up. They're showing up again and again and again in really hard circumstances. They are doing an incredible job from my evaluation of it. Parents who are doing an incredible job in a very, very hard situation, and they feel like they are failing. So I wanted to come on today and talk about that, because if this is something you've been thinking or feeling about yourself in your own parenting, you are absolutely not alone. And I want to try to peel back the layers of what that might be about, and also give you some space, hopefully through listening to this podcast, to consider, how's that working for you? Right? What purpose is it serving? And is there some way that we can start to shift those beliefs in a way that actually helps you, right? Helps you make sense of this parenting experience and leaves you in a better place. So one of the most common things that I hear from parents who, again, are raising kids with these intense, relentless behaviors, it's something along the lines of what I mentioned before, like, I am failing as a parent. I am not good at this. Someone else would be doing this better. I should be better at this by now. And sometimes these reflections come, of course, on the hardest days where they've had an incredibly challenging day with their child, and for very understandable reasons, they weren't able to respond in the way that they hoped they would on a perfect day. But what I also see is that as that persistent belief starts to take hold, it really grows deeper over time and it becomes the dominant belief. When you are parenting a child whose behaviors are constant, maybe unpredictable, they are absolutely intense, when the strategies that are supposed to work do not work, when nothing feels consistent, when you are beyond exhausted and there's no break, no respite for you, it makes sense that your brain starts to try to make meaning out of that. That's what our brains do for us. And often the meaning that your brain lands on is, this must be about me. I must be doing something wrong. I should be better at this by now. In my conversations with parents about those beliefs, I often hear something else just sitting right underneath that belief. And it is this constant irritability that grows over time. It's a short fuse that they're like, this isn't how I used to be. It is a sense of being on edge at all times. And many parents can tell me, like, I don't like this version of myself. I don't like who I've become. I'm more reactive than I want to be. I feel impatient all the time. And they come to this conclusion, I am failing. That's what that means to them. And that is actually not true. That irritability, it is not a sign of failure. It is not a character flaw. It's often a defensive behavior, just like we talk about with our kids having behavioral symptoms. We have those too. It is a defensive behavior that is masking some really, really tough stuff. Okay? Many times, the parents that I'm working with, and they describe that irritability, it's covering deep, more complex emotions, things like fear and grief and even resentment. So I want to slow down just a little bit. And the reason for that is because I want to talk more about these three: fear, grief, and resentment. But I also know, again, this is not just my belief, this is what neuroscience supports, is that when we are living in survival mode as a parent, as I know many of you are, these layers are not obvious because we are in survival mode. It's so easy to get pulled into a shame spiral where we can't see beyond our own defensive behaviors to get to the root cause of what is actually happening for us. So I mentioned irritability masking deep fear. Fear might sound something like, what happens if my child can't function independently? What is their future going to look like? What if things don't get better? How will they ever learn, right? Fear can drive a lot of our behavior. Grief. We covered grief in depth in episode 22. I'll link to that in the show notes. But grief might sound something like, this isn't what I expected parenting to feel like, or I thought it would be so different, or I miss the version of the life I thought we would have. And grief is so complicated here in this parenting experience that you and I share because it often exists alongside deep love for your child. Both can be true. And then resentment. This one is the one that I think is hardest for many parents to really come to terms with, certainly voice out loud. Resentment towards the situation, resentment towards how much this requires of you. It feels unfair. Resentment towards how little support you've received. Maybe even feeling resentment towards your child, that their needs are so great, even when you know it's not their fault, right? So when that voice is shouting at you, you are a failure, you are failing as a parent, it's a reaction to our brains trying to make sense of the stress it's experiencing and organize it in a way that creates more meaning about or around this really hard experience. This reaction does not account for what's really driving those beliefs, which is all that fear, all that grief, maybe feeling abandoned, left to figure this out on your own, all of the overwhelm. I'm failing can feel more concrete or maybe even more familiar than sitting with, this is really hard. This is not what I expected. I am terrified. I'm scared. I feel so lonely. I am so overwhelmed. And when your nervous system is stretched thin and your window of tolerance has narrowed over time, when you are in a near constant state of activation, waiting for the other shoe to drop, trying to control every element when that is just not possible, your brain is not operating from its most flexible, regulated place. It's trying to survive. So of course it moves towards self-blame. If you are not familiar with window of tolerance that I just mentioned, you can learn more about that concept in episode 29 of this podcast. I will link to that in the show notes as well. It's a really important concept that I want to make sure you revisit after this episode if you haven't listened to that one already. Alrighty, so how do we begin to shift this dynamic in a way that is more supportive of you, in a way that is based in the reality of your experience? It's not by beating yourself up over the way you reacted or the way you behaved. It's not by telling yourself, you just need to be a better parent. It is about turning towards what's underneath. Because when we begin to name what's actually there, the fear, the grief, the resentment, the sheer exhaustion, those emotions begin to lose some of their intensity. You're no longer trying to stuff them down or hold it in or pretending that they don't even exist. You're giving them some space. You're giving them a little more breathing room, and that makes room for some self-compassion. So the next time that you're thinking, I am failing, I want you to pause. And I want you to ask yourself, what might this be covering up right now? Or what story am I telling myself about this situation? And is it true? Is there fear there? Is there grief there? Is there exhaustion? You're not trying to fix anything in this moment of pause. You're just noticing. And then from there, offer yourself a dose of self-compassion. What would you say to your dearest, closest friend if they were sharing all of this with you? How would you respond? And then give yourself that same response, that same love, that same empathy, that same compassion. Because here is the truth, and I found myself saying this to every one of those parents that I sat with today. This is as hard as you think it is. You're not overreacting. You are parenting in circumstances that most people do not understand and cannot imagine. These are circumstances that would be hard on any human. You are showing up every day in a situation that requires more from you than is reasonable to expect from any one human. You were never meant to do this alone. And the fact that you are even asking, am I doing this right? Should I be better? It shows how much you care. So self-reflection absolutely is key to us growing in our ability to parent our kids more effectively. It just needs to be self-reflection with a whole lot of self-compassion, not harsh criticism. Because you deserve that same understanding that you are working so hard to offer your child. So if this is something you've been feeling the weight of, I hope this episode helps support you in feeling less alone and also taking a small step towards softening that inner narrative, even just a little. Thanks as always for being here. I appreciate you listening in. And until next time, take care. Hey, real quick before we go, if you are on Instagram or Facebook and you have not yet hit that follow button for Eileen Divine and Brain First Parenting, that is where I hang out and share information every single day about the Brain First Parenting approach, as well as my upcoming workshops or free resources that I've created for parents just like you. It would mean the world to me if you join me on either one of those platforms. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you there.